this mean it's over?
Does this mean he likes me?
Are butterflies good?
Am I ever gonna meet someone?
I'm tired of swiping.
Am I normal?
Dating apps do come with downsides, but they have brought us a lot more opportunity. You can keep waiting for the fairy tale, or you can get on board with the new rules of relationships. If you've seen me on The Real Housewives of Beverly Hills, then you know this ain't your mama's love advice. This is Dates and Mates with Damona Hoffman. Hello, lovers. Welcome to a sweater weather cozy episode of Dates and Mates. Fall is in full swing. Cuffing season is here. Thanksgiving is just around the corner. So I think it's the perfect time to talk about love, relationships, and everything in between. Whether you're navigating cuffing season or gearing up to meet someone's family for the holidays or figuring out how to take your dating game to the next level, don't worry, I've got you covered. Today's episode is all about you. We're dedicating the whole show to your Dear Damona questions. So settle in, maybe with a cozy cup of hot cider, and let's dive into your most pressing dating dilemmas and relationship questions as we head into the holiday season. I'll be answering your top cues like, I struggle to find matches in my area, and while I'm willing to travel, many men aren't. So what now? My matches keep removing their profiles once we exchange numbers. So, what is going on here? When should daters consider sleeping together? And are gender roles changing, or do men still have to be the initiator? Oh, honey, it's going to be a live one. Let's get right into it.
Dear Damona.
Damona, help me.
Our first question comes to us in an Instagram DM from a listener named Adrian. She says, hello, Ms. Hoffman. I love it. Ms. Hoffman, if you're nasty, you can call me Damona. Come on, how long have we known each other? All right, here's Adrian's question. She says, dating sites in the last 2 years have been wonderful. I've made friends and had exciting dates and one relationship for a couple of years. The dilemma for me has been my location and the willingness for men to travel. I'm willing to travel to meet them, but of course, that can be tricky. Is there a specific dating site that I should use for this situation? I'd love to hear your advice. First of all, Adrian, you go, girl. I love this attitude that dating apps have, well, say sites, apps. I know some some Gen Z listeners just were like, what did she just say? She said sites? Yeah, okay. So back in the olden times, online dating used to only happen on a computer. Now it happens on your phone and we call it apps. It's all the same thing. So dating sites, dating apps, having this attitude that they've been wonderful is something that I literally wish I could hand to every single one of you listening right now. Because and I was just talking to my client group, my I do a monthly call for all of my clients, and I was just saying, like, we have forgotten what the old times of dating used to look like. And the ability for someone to expand their dating pool as quickly as you can on dating apps, we've started to take that for granted because, of course, dating apps do come with their fair share of downsides. But let's not forget that they have brought us a lot more opportunity. So I love that Adrian is able to see that it's made her friends. She's had exciting dates. She had one relationship for a couple of years. So that I would put in the success category. Yay. But you're still looking for that long-term person. So let's figure out how to get it. I love that you are also willing to travel for love. So this is one thing. This is like a public service announcement for anyone who feels like their dating pool is finite, is fixed, is stagnant. You've got to change some of the factors. And I truly believe that one of the easiest factors to change, especially today, is your location. I find that a lot of times people start with a broader location and then they start to narrow it down when they realize that, oh, that's going to mean that, like for me in LA, like I have to cross the 405, long distance relationship. But we have so many tools that make, quote, long distance relationships work. And I think the answer is not to limit your pool more. The answer is to screen better prior to the date. Because the reason that many people narrow the radius that they're willing to date in, and I think most people have it set to a 5 mile radius, maybe 10, but I don't have the receipts in front of me, but you can check my math on that. But anecdotally, I can say for a lot of my clients, it's quite small because they'll say, I went on a date with somebody and they were 20 miles away. And then it was such a disappointment. I just wasted so much time. But the answer is not to invest in a long distance or even a crosstown relationship and then go through a bunch of effort to show up and then be disappointed. The answer is widen your filter, get the options in your queue, then go through the screening step that I'm always talking about and figure out before you get to the date that they have your basic level of compatibility, your 3 must-haves and not your one deal breaker. And that's where using FaceTime or Zoom or in-app calling features will really help you, or even the old-fashioned phone call, which we're going to talk about a little bit more later in the show. But yeah, expanding your parameters can be really helpful. And you've heard me say on this show before, I've had a lot of clients that have met and partnered and married and built lives cross country, literally coast to coast, or from country to country. So it is possible for you if you and your partner are willing to go the distance, which brings me to the second part of Adrian's question. And I'm going to start with the importance of language and the words that we use. So Adrian said, the dilemma for me has been my location and the willingness for men to travel. Now I know she's only meeting men, so that is her perspective from where she sits right now. But it's the reality is a lot of people have that limited view of their dating pool. Like, I gotta make it needs to be convenient. This person needs to be able to fit into my existing life. I am unwilling to uproot my life or change my routines or work remotely. And we tend to get very stuck and fixed in our life the way it is. And part of the journey and adventure of dating is saying, what if? What if that was not true? What if I believed that I had to live in this place? And we saw this a lot during the pandemic. And then we we're met with a pandemic and everybody's sent home, and you're like, "Oh, I can do this from my home anywhere." So if that is not fixed, then what does that mean for my dating prospects? What does that mean for the rest of my life? And I know that can be a little bit overwhelming, but I also look at it as kind of exciting if you just ask what could change. But the reality is you're going to meet some people who are not going to be in that space. And it's not based on the app that you're on or the site. It's not based on the gender of the person. It's literally just based on that person and how they feel about long distance relationships, how tied they are to the location that they're in. And this is why I start in the book F the Fairy Tale with dating goals. So, if you can align with somebody whose goal is to find love anywhere and they are open to it, that's great. If you are reaching out to people who are not in your location and they're not open to a long distance relationship, that's a mismatch of dating goals. So that's a no right out of the gate. And you don't have to waste any more time on that. There are, of course, there are apps for people who prefer long distance dating. One of my clients met on an international dating site. I don't follow all the seasons of 90 Day Fiance, but I'm sure many of them have met on international dating sites. So that's an option for you. You have to really be careful about Catfish, but I have a client who was successful on an international dating site, also on a site where it was a language app. It was like you find partners all over the world to practice another language with. And it wasn't a dating site, but they ended up connecting and dating. So there's a lot of ways to go about this. If you want to be in a pool where it's specifically people who want to date someone outside of their geographic area. The other thing to remember is that a lot of the apps now have this sort of passport feature that Tinder introduced many, many years ago. And many of them now are included in it used to be like a more expensive add-on, and then during the pandemic, they kinda made it a standard feature, and now it's basically included in a lot of the standard upgrades. So, that's worthwhile to invest in to do the passport and see who is in another location since many of the apps are based on location, and that's the primary filter that they're showing you people based on. And some people aren't going to be willing to travel, and some people are. And remember, as always, with whatever that limiting factor is, the wrong people will filter themselves out. The right people will lean in, and we're not looking for it's not a popularity contest. We're not looking for volume. We're looking for quality over quantity. So keep with this expansive attitude and keep with this expansive way of searching, and I'm quite sure it's going to work out great for you. Our second question was emailed to us from a listener named Sue. She said, Dear Damona, recently it seems that a few of the men I've met online dating, Bumble, have removed their online profiles as soon as we share phone numbers. Do you have any data or insights about this behavior? Now, Sue goes on to give me more specifics, but I want to just address the first part of this question first. If somebody removes their profile soon after you share phone numbers, number one, they may be a catfish, or number two, because they don't want to get caught by the app, remember. Or number two, they're burnout on dating, or they're putting all of their dating eggs in your basket. Either way, it's slightly suspicious behavior that makes my spidey senses go up. I also have to remind you, I don't want you to exchange phone numbers. I will keep saying this on the show until people stop writing into me about it. And I will literally die on this hill, you guys. I don't recommend exchanging phone numbers. Don't move off the platform because this is literally classic catfish. Classic and more than catfish. This is classic scammer behavior. They want to move you off the platform. I talked about it years ago when we talked about the Tinder swindler. The first thing he did was like, let's talk on WhatsApp. Nope, nope, because then the app cannot track. It doesn't have that information on what they said or who they are. And then if they delete their profile, there's the person basically just disappears from the app. They create a new profile and they go and do it to someone else. Okay. And then the other thing that happens is you lose momentum. Every time you change platforms, you lose momentum. So let's just say they're not a catfish. Let's just say that they're really interested in you. The misconception is that when you move platforms, you're actually escalating the relationship to the next level. Oh, she gave me her number, so she's very interested. But what ends up happening is that then you end up in an endless text thread, and I know you guys know what I'm talking about with this. You're going to end up in an endless text thread that does not materialize into a relationship or maybe even a date, and you are going to just end up losing that anticipation in the communication when you've switched from one to the other. Because what is truly tell me, what is the point? What is like if we're just texting right now, what's the point of me giving you my phone number just open? Just call me anytime, text me anytime? No, you have to if you're going to exchange numbers, which must please, please, please must be a masked phone number. Get a Google Voice, get a text now, get a masked phone number that you're using just for dating that is not traceable to you. Then, when you give them that number, it is with purpose. It is, let's talk tomorrow night. I'll be home after 7. Or, hey, are you available right now? Let's chat on the phone. Let's FaceTime. There's purpose behind it. Okay? It cannot be just open-ended. You can't just have your phone number out there in the ether because there's just very few good outcomes that come from that. Okay, now moving on. She gives me more details. She says, here's what's been happening. I exchanged my cell phone, and then there have been a few texts from 3 different men. I wanted to move to a real phone chat. Very good on you, Sue. I wanted to move to a real phone chat, and this morning talked with one man. His accent sounded slightly Hispanic, although he claims to be from Poland. Mismatch. No good. Then Sue goes on. Then there happened to be details overlapping from one of the other person's life stories, like his business, plus specifically an adult daughter studying medicine and surgery in Queensland, Australia. Crazy. Catfish, stolen photos. I reported it on Bumble this morning, but why is this happening? Why is it happening? It's happening because scammers are going to go where the people are. And you've heard me probably say this on the show before, but online dating is not actually the biggest venue for romance scams. It's social media. So it's not that you're only going to meet Catfish on Bumble or any other dating app. They're also going to find you wherever they have critical mass. So, this is why we just have to have our spidey senses up. It's kind of the same as like, I mean, I hate to say it, but like as a woman walking down the street, like I'm just like, I have a right to walk down the street at night, sure. But if I'm by myself in an unfamiliar area, I'm just going to have a tiny little bit of vigilance. It doesn't mean I'm not going to walk down the street, but I'm just going to think a little bit about where I'm parking my car and what my surroundings are. And I'm going to like have my eyes up and paying attention. Right. So that's all I'm asking you guys to do. I know. I just like everyone just panicked. It's okay, everybody. It's okay. This is just, we live in the world. We live in the world. And so we want to be educated about what the possible dangers or outcomes or just realities are of living in the world. And you're doing the right thing in weeding those people out when you get that feeling of like, wait, there's a detail that doesn't match, or there's a detail that matches somebody else that I've also been talking to. Like, that's just diabolical. Or that there's something that's a mismatch with their photos, or they've called you at a weird time. Sometimes that will happen. They'll be like, "Yeah, I'll call you." And then it's like at 6 in the morning or like 2 in the morning. Um, because that's when they're doing their work. And just also remember that the people who do this, and it's a relatively small number of bad actors that are doing a lot of this. Like obviously this person is creating multiple Catfish accounts. And it's a relatively small number of people that are ruining a good time for everybody else. So definitely report them. Report them, report them, report them. Everybody. If you have a negative experience, and especially Bumble takes this very seriously because they want to create a safe space for women to date. But it's going to happen because, look, the reality is there are people in the world that get what they want, that are masters at doing this, that know exactly how to say the right thing to get what they need from you. And that those folks are online, they're offline, they're out there. But you know who else is out there? Your person, your possible soulmate, if I may use that word. So hang in there, Sue, and stay alert because we're all in this together. We're coming in hot for this Dear Damona episode right out of the gate with big questions, but that's not all. We have 2 more of your dating questions coming at you. But first, I need to take a quick break with a word from our sponsors who help us bring you Dates and Mates absolutely free. Thank you for supporting the sponsors who support us on Dates and Mates. Let's get back to your questions. Our next question is an Instagram message from an anonymous listener. This person says, "Do you have a recommendation for when 2 people who have started dating can sleep together? Or what to say if my date proposes we sleep together and I feel it's too soon?" I love these questions that ask me for like timelines or guidelines because the reality is the rules are there are no rules. But the first thing you have to check in with is how you feel. Like, do you have a personal philosophy about when it's appropriate to sleep with someone that you're dating? Do you feel like you need to have a certain level of connection, emotional connection? Do you feel like there's an unwritten rule in your head of how much time that should be? Because that is your first guidepost. Like, sure, I would love to tell you that for most of my clients, it happens sometime between date 3 and date 8. And you can write that down if you wish, because that is the reality. For most of my clients, it's somewhere between date 3 and date 8. But not for all of my clients, and maybe not for you. Anonymous, you might not feel ready at that point, and that's okay. And someone else listening might feel like, look, I've been having sex on the first date since 1993, honey. And that's okay too. If you feel like that is getting you the connection that you desire and the outcomes that you desire. If not, then you might want to look at adjusting that pattern. Any pattern that we encounter in dating, if you change the factors, may change the end result. So, somewhere between date 3 and date 8, maybe if it feels right to you, but I really want you to check in on A, how you feel, and B, when you feel comfortable enough to have a conversation about the possible consequences of being intimate with someone. What does that mean, Damona? I'm glad you asked. Well, it's the possible consequences vary based on your age, based on your state, based on your STI status. So, all of these things factor in. And I'll say this, like, for young women in certain states like Texas, the consequences of sex very high right now. So you have to weigh the pros and cons of that before you have sex with someone. And yes, I'm a big proponent of safe sex, but really what we're talking about is safer sex, because no method of birth control or STI prevention is 100%. Condoms are pretty good, but they're not 100%. And also don't protect you from against certain STIs. Like herpes is skin to skin contact. So that y- it could still happen, my friends. So do you have fun, but just know what all of the possible outcomes are, and when you can have that conversation with your partner and say, okay, I feel like I'm ready to do this, but like I need to know your STI status, and I just got tested and here are my results. um and it's often a good place to start from, like, your own willingness to disclose your status or other personal information, and that usually will make the other person a little more comfortable sharing and will sort of disarm them. And we need to be talking about it, because gone are the days where we could just be like, well, we'll just have sex and let the chips fall where they may. And by the way, I'm saying this to daters of all ages. I find that sometimes my 50 plus daters sort of think that they're like past the STI window. You're like, if you haven't caught it by now, it's probably fine. No, actually, STI rates are increasing fastest among 50 plus daters because of that reason, right? And because online dating expanded dating pools in a segment where it was actually much harder to meet new people to date. So, if you are not ready and they are ready, what you say is just what you said to me, Anonymous. You say, I'm really enjoying getting to know you. I don't feel like I'm ready for intimacy yet. And I want it to be really special when we do get to that point. I want it to be really special. So be patient with me. And a decent person who's really interested in you has to be okay with that. And if they're not okay with that, that also tells you a lot about them. And I have clients and listeners here who are waiting until marriage to have sex. And that is something that you should disclose early on, so that person's not waiting around potentially 6 months, 9 months, a year, if that's not something that they're willing to do. But you pace the relationship, you can begin the conversation, and you can really take the lead on your sexual health, wellness, and the pace of your relationship. Our final question of the day was emailed to us from an anonymous feller we'll call Aaron. He says, do you know of any couples or of any relationships in which the woman asked the man out or the woman was the initiator It's a follow-up to where you have encouraged women to ask men out. Some people like to think that the world is slowly changing. However, at the same time, a part of me doubts it. As in, I just see it as men always being stuck with that gender role. So, Aaron, I appreciate the email and I will fully accept that role of some people who think that the world is slowly changing. Yes, it is slowly changing. And it's not even slowly changing, let's be honest. The dating scene has dramatically changed in just the time that I have been doing this work, which is about 18 years. I know. I know I don't look a day over 15. But but I will say that it's not changing as fast as I would like to see it change. And I have seen many couples where the woman initiates. Now, I really want to specify, I want to differentiate between initiating, meaning starting the conversation or asking someone out or suggesting that someone asks you out so as to make them believe that they have made the first move. Wink, wink. But I don't see a lot of relationships work where women become pursuers, where it's a chasing situation. To be honest, I don't see a ton of relationships work out where either party gets in the space of chasing or pursuing and it works out. I've seen people get married from that situation, but then divorced later. No one wants to be chased because if somebody's chasing you, what do? You want to run. And so I don't believe in the pursuit. I think both people need to come to the table, but I truly believe that it makes absolutely no difference in the health and longevity of the relationship who makes the quote first move because the quote first move is always mutual, almost always mutual in a connection that ends up in a date. Like, sure, there are people that will ask you out and you're like, thank you, but no thank you. But if that person is going to say yes, there's always a dance and an exchange where both people are meeting in the middle of like, well, I have some curiosity and interest, and so do you. And it truly does not matter who starts the conversation. And many times women are actually initiating with body language, nonverbal communication, with making suggestions. Like I hear so many times from listeners that are like, oh, yeah, I just said to him, why don't you ask me out? I know that that has the essence of the man asking the woman out because that is the physical fact of what happened. But if a woman said, "Why don't you ask me out?" She did initiate. She initiated that step. And it's funny because I actually was just talking to a couple of weeks ago, and that exact thing happened. They met at a party and he was kind of like, I don't know. He was like kind of on the fence, being a little wishy washy, couldn't read the signals. She just went to her friend and said, tell John to ask me out. And so John was like, okay. And now they're married and they have 2 children and a beautiful life together. And you know what? She's a go-getter still in her relationship. So that's the bigger dynamic to understand. Because what I don't want is for women who are initiators, who are take charge kind of people, to be like, oh, but in dating, I can't do that. You need to take the lead because that's what gender roles have told us. And then you get in the relationship and you're like, here's where we're going, here's what's happening, and you're running the show. Because that is false. That is you putting yourself into a pretzel to become what you think is dateable. And there's a reason I say love as you are. It's because you are lovable just as you are. The way that you show up in the beginning of the relationship should be the way that you show up throughout the relationship. And that's okay. If you want to be the initiator kind of person, whatever your gender identity is, whatever your orientation is, whoever you like to date, you are in control of your dating destiny. And the sooner we put those rules, the fairy tale stories, and expectations on the shelf, the sooner we can get to just being humans who want true connection, intimacy, relationships, care, and really, that's what we all deserve. That's what we all want, and it's what we all deserve. Well, that was a fun one. I hope you enjoyed episode 534 of Dates and Mates. We went through a lot of questions, and I want you to know the DMs are still open at Damona Hoffman on TikTok, Facebook, and Instagram. And I just want to remind you, I do love a voice memo. It's so good when I can hear the question in your own voice. So if you send it to me on Instagram, you can literally just record a voice memo right there in your phone. Don't worry, we will check in with you before we put it on the show, but that is an option to you. And I may just send you a voice memo back. Some of you have gotten voice memos from me, people who've written to me on Instagram. And I know it's always like, what? This is so weird. I've been listening to the podcast and now you're here in my DMs. So if that encourages you to send me a voice memo, then let's make it happen and I will send you a voice memo back. You can also give me a call or shoot me a text at 424-246-6255. That's our 24/7 voicemail line. So you get home from a bad date and you're just like, I need to talk to somebody. It's cool. You can just like pick up the phone, ramble, stream of consciousness. Tell me what happened. Tell me your problems. I'll help you out. We'll be back again next week with psychologist and mental health expert Dr. Alfie to talk about the intersection of dating, mental health, and therapy. Until then, I wish you happy dating.